Hi, this is Yogan Barrientos, and I'm doing another video. So, a friend shared with me this video, no, sorry, this article from the Guardian. The Guardian. Here, I'm just pulling it up for myself. So, on the Guardian, which is, I believe, a popular news article source for the UK, England. Uh, Apparently, this is the US edition. So this author who wrote this article, his name is Guy Standing, and he's a professor of developmental studies at the School of, as part of the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London. So this professor from the University of London wrote this article about this event or events that are occurring in India regarding the basic income. Now, for those who don't know, I support a living income, which is very similar to a basic income. That, well, I'll get into that in a moment, but that's, for those who don't know, that's sort of why I'm talking about this article. It's very interesting. It's written in such a way, because it is written by professors, and it's about a study that was conducted. So these very specific terms that are used within studies of social sciences, and yeah, it's just part of the field. So I would like to be able to talk a little bit about this article, explain some of the points, because if you're not someone who has that kind of educational background, it's going to be difficult to really understand what is being said. And even for me, there's some points where I have to reread because it's just some words or some phrases that's not very commonly used, only used within the written word, within writing. But basically, there's a study in India that was conducted for a period of time. Here it says, in one pilot, everybody in 8 villages were provided with a basic income for 18 months. That's 1 year and a half. Or no, sorry. Yeah, 1 year and a half. And their experience was evaluated by comparing what took place in 12 other similar villages. Okay. So basically, they had 8 villages that had a basic income, and they took 12 other villages that didn't have a basic income during the same time period, and they compared them. Okay, so this is a comparison study. And they said it was a randomized control trial, so they didn't pick and choose which villages would be receiving this benefit or not receiving it. They was randomly chosen. This is a classical social science study. It seemed to be very well, if this is exactly what they did, then it was very well executed. And I'll get into the results, because that's what everyone's dying to know, right? So what were the results if they compare these two villages, or these two types of, the villages that they gave the basic income to? And I didn't explain this. I'm sorry if I'm confusing anyone. That a basic income is basically, in layman's terms, money, a certain amount of money that's given to the population. So it's not like a lot of, in this study they didn't use a lot of money, but it was a part of what would be considered necessary. From what I read, I didn't read any specific details, but it was like a very modest amount. So just to jump into the results, so they found 4 significant results. The first was that there were improvements in child nutrition, child and adult health, school attendance and performance, sanitation, economic activity, and earned incomes, and the socioeconomic status of women, the elderly, and the disabled. So that's a lot of information. But if you look at what it's saying is that overall, the health, the children attending school, children doing better in their school and their grades. Sanitation, meaning cleanliness of the village was cleaner. People were earning more money. So by just giving people some amount of money, they were able to earn more money. And I remember reading somewhere else here that villagers started opening up businesses, small businesses. They were paying back their loans, so they were decreasing their interest rate. So all these different things, all these positive benefits. It's so simple. I'm sure everyone who's hearing this for the first time is probably ripping their hairs out, because how can something so simple as giving some people money, a little bit of money, not even that much, do all of this, But it happened. That's what's pretty cool. So just like, why does gravity work? Why are there males and females? Or why are there different countries? I mean, that's just how it is right now. And this study, these results, this happened. It's just how things are. So I mean, we can ask all these questions why, which is really interesting. It's part of science. Though what happened happened. So it's better, to accept it and understand why. Okay, so they also talked about how the people who are vulnerable, such as women, children, and people who had disabilities, were able to improve their lives. That normally they would have been in a situation of where they couldn't really help themselves. So this is also important to realize too, that people who are more vulnerable are able to help themselves more because they have this additional fund. They also chose to give the basic income to children, but through their mothers. So they will give the money that would be for the children, but to the mom, so that she can use it, which makes sense to me. That's a good way to do it. So what else? Increase economic activity and work. So overall, that's pretty interesting, because the fact that people were working more is something that people wouldn't think would happen, because a lot of people, at least here in my culture, in the United States, if you think you're giving a homeless person some money, they're not going to work. And while in these kinds of countries, in India, where you have villages which are very poor, if you give them that amount of money, they actually try to make their lives better, So I think it's important to look at the differences in the situation when you have like a family, a village in poverty. That when you give them money, they're going to want to support themselves and make better lives for themselves, which is a kind of different situation than you have a homeless person here. There's also many reasons why people are homeless that doesn't have really to do with money. Some people choose to, leave their lives, leave their work. It could be different kinds of addictions or problems, which leads to the homeless situation. So it's important not to confuse those two situations and treat them the same, because they're really not. I mean, this is a very nice article. I would recommend reading it. Let's see. Yes, this is the last thing about emancipation, which emancipation means to make free. So about how the villagers were, many of the villagers were using their money, their basic income, for paying back old debts, and so within that, freeing themselves. That was pretty cool. Cool. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Pretty good insight, introduction to this article. The Guardian is pretty famous, so it's cool that this kind of article showed up there, and it was written by the professor. And it gives a little bit more, credence. So yeah, so my point of view, I guess I'll share for 2 minutes. So yeah, people in these kind of situations, when you think about people who are poor, about 50 to 60% of the population on the planet are within that poverty range where they're just making just enough to eat and the basic things. So the majority of the people on the planet, they're in a situation where money isn't easily coming in or being spent because there is none around. Um, so in that kind of situation, it makes sense because money is so scarce. If you introduce a greater supply of money simply by giving it to people, that will allow people in those situations where money is scarce to be plentiful, so it can actually circulate within the villages, the villagers as well, amongst themselves, and that will actually increase economic activity on a local level, very individual, personal level amongst the people who before had really couldn't have access to money or maybe access to work because other businesses didn't have the money to pay out. And so it's really a very basic point of supply. When something is too scarce, it becomes very difficult to attain, and there's just stagnation. The economy isn't able to move. You know, so yeah, that's my 2 minutes. I don't know if that's been 2 minutes, but yeah, it is. Okay, so I recommend liking this video, but also sharing this article that that my friend shared with me, and to read about basic income, read about living income, which is what I support, which is a stronger version of basic income that has a very interesting and very, I think, a nicer, broader outlook on the situation. It includes more holistic considerations because there are other things to consider within giving out money to population to make sure that the economy survives and the economy actually thrives off of that. So we include within living income greater, some more help within structuring the economy to make sure that the economy has lots of demand, a lot of mobility, that it doesn't actually slow down, which is some of the fears and concerns within having basic income, which in situations where there's poverty, um, you know, this seems less likely, but in situations here in the United States, I think there's some extra considerations to consider when applying a basic or living income. Okay, so you can read all about that, all what I'm talking about on livingincome.me or me, livingincome.me, M-E, and I'll post a link so you have an easy access, and have a nice day. That's all I wanted to say.